Welcome to the world of delusions. A world filled with monsters that come in many shapes and sizes. First, we'll look at Torberg, a city known for housing the followers of Tormarch, who imprison and kill those with the gift of magic. Elric, the ruler of this great city, is one of the youngest kings to ever sit on the throne. North of Torberg is Nemont, a city run by the Order of Imperius, a place for those seeking safety from others, as long as they do their obligations for the Order and the people of Nemont. The ruler of this city is called the Grand Exarch of the High Seraph, and only the most loyal and hard-working follower get to speak with the Grand Exarch. West, we find a city called Black Hollows, known for its mechanical marvels that protect its people, and its giant meteors filled with purple crystals that power the city. They are also known for the lack of royalty after the whole family was crushed by meteors. The current ruler of the city is unknown to everyone, but it is said that a group of mercenaries has taken the city under their wing. Past 10 years, tension has been building up in the cities of Torberg, Nemont, and Black Hollows. Torberg and Nemont have joined a military alliance and declared war on Black Hollows. Black Hollows responded in kind by raising an army of machines. While neither side has gained any ground, thousands of lives from the Torberg and Nemont alliance have been slain by the machines of Black Hollows. Small towns have been trampled beneath the might of Black Hollows' army, but this has left the machines weakened and starving for fuel. Far in the north, the Vikings of Wolford have conducted numerous raids on the towns and cities across the world, stealing thousands of magic items to sate their unending greed. A rumor of a new kingdom has been spreading. Not much is known about it, not even its location, but people say an ancient being rules over it, goes by the name Gunga Ginga.
Nature demands it.
Meanwhile, adventurers Bob, Jed, and Smallbeak have made new lives in Norfolk by telling their stories. A thick fog creeps closer to a small village called Longdale, and that is where we will start our story.
Sa Blessings be upon you. I am Malchus Gregan II, cleric to the Order of the High Seraph Imperius. I am pleased to make your acquaintance. What's that? You don't know of the High Seraph Imperius? Allow me to enlighten you. Imperius is the last shining beacon of hope in this dark world. He is the only High Seraph that cares for the lives of not only those who follow him, but all precious life. He is the sword against all evil and shield of the innocent. Be it undead, aberration, fiend, or demon, all filth will be purged by his cleansing light. I know what you must be thinking. I see you notice the tail, my eyes, the horns. Yes, I am a tiefling. My blood is of demonic heritage. Fear not. I have denounced my demonic blood before the eyes of the Order many years ago, just as my father did before me. In time, through service, Imperius himself will cleanse me and my family of the demonic blood that plagues us. I am beyond grateful for the existence of the Order. Despite my demonic nature, they have allowed myself and my father to stand among our fellow members as equals. Imperius truly is the greatest miracle we have. May his light and love shine over all. Praise be to the High Seraph! Excuse me. Got a little carried away there. Nothing brings me greater pleasure than spreading the word of the High Seraph and his Order. I was born in Nemant, where the Grand Chapel of the Order resides. I joined at the age of 4 to follow in my father's footsteps. I trained to become a cleric, learning healing magic as well as the art of combat. By the time I came of age, I became a full-fledged member. Since then, I have been stationed at a detachment in Ampleforth. Over the years, I have carried out several missions, vanquishing evil monsters, recruiting members, healing the sick and wounded. The Order of Imperius does all it can to help those in need. Recently, I have been assigned my first high-priority mission straight from the Grand Chapel. According to the knights who are traveling with me, I have been handpicked specifically for this mission. It seems that I am finally getting recognized for my reliability within the Order. I am to recover an artifact from an old ruin near Longdale and deliver it to Nemant. I am told that within this artifact a great evil is sealed away inside. The artifact has unleashed some sort of curse on the town of Longdale. The town and its surrounding area have been shrouded by an evil fog. People have gone missing. Livestock has begun to die. The residents of the town are suffering. I've met a few interesting individuals in Longdale. They have come along with me to help rid the town of the fog. When I first laid eyes on Cragtoe, he struck me as a drunken troublemaker. However, that impression was short-lived. He's just a loud and boisterous dwarf with a strong taste for alcohol and an endless supply of stories. He may act intimidating, but beneath that hairy exterior, I can see a merry, kind soul. He's quite handy with that axe of his, too. I haven't seen many turtles, much less spoken to one. Lauren, however, has made a great first impression. He speaks a bit slowly, but it doesn't bother me. He seems very knowledgeable in the ways of magic. He is also in search of a healer, someone well versed in the ways of revivification. What or who he wants to bring back is a mystery to me. I offered to take him to my order in Nemant after we disperse the fog over Longdale. Surely, he will find the help he needs there. Lastly, we have a pale dragonborn woman. I will say, her appearance is a tad unsettling. She doesn't really say much, hasn't even given me her name. Could be one of those rogues, perhaps, with that thick cloak she wears. Something tells me she doesn't seem very fond of members of the Order. I can't say for sure, given I can count the amount of words she spoke to me on one hand. However, her willingness to help the people affected by this fog tells me she has a charitable soul. I'm sure there is nothing to worry about. I am thankful for her help. Words cannot describe my excitement to undertake this mission. This is my chance to prove myself as an invaluable member of the Order, to show that my demonic heritage does not define me, and that my family is worthy of its place in the Order. Perhaps the High Seraph Imperius himself will finally cleanse the evil blood that courses through my veins. One thing is certain. I will not fail. No! 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 No!
Upon a precipice stands a colossal Athenaeum, housing the bulk of knowledge both arcane and academic. Dreadcliff, its current moniker, is better known as a menagerie of imprisoned souls, trapped between the stacks within their own flesh, immutable in time. A haunted house, one might say. A cursed place. What the people do not know about it, though, is that I, Lauren Datum, am the one who cursed it. Before, it was a pulchritudinous library of wonders known as Cliffside. And it was my home. I was abandoned there as an infant and raised by the head of the organization, Cyrus, a half-orc wizard who had clipped his ears and filed his fangs. It was his solemn duty to research the arcane for the crown, to preserve knowledge and to safeguard a selection of the crown's greatest magical treasures located deep within the side of the cliff for which the library took its name. I was born a natural sorcerer, but through Cyrus's tutelage, I trained as a wizard. But the natural wild magic in me was a beast to tame. At the age of 10, over 20 years ago, I caught a plague of the lungs. My coughing fits fired wild magic to and fro, but nothing too serious at first. However, one day, while I was still recovering, the keep was invaded by raiders. One stabbed Cyrus right through the heart as he covered me from their blows. But at that same moment, I released the greatest sneeze of my lifetime. Wild magic dispersed from my body like an unstoppered cork from a bottle containing pressurized, aerated liquid sealed in abjuration magics. Everyone, save me, was petrified in time, their eyes forever pried open. Cyrus, forever between life and death. I studied for decades for ways to undo the curse, but I could find no way to do it and also keep Cyrus alive. I finally, and recently, left Cliffside in search of others attuned to the arcane to find a solution. That's how I met my new pupils, with whom I have been traveling. Malachite, the armored one, he has promised to lead me to a healer in the town of Nemo. I'm not sure about that one after we had to battle his possessed form, but he assures me nothing has changed in our arrangement. Silly, or whatever her name is, the scary Dragonborn lady, she also gives me pause, especially after revealing those unnatural tentacles. And who could forget Crackhead, the scariest of them all, with his face and chest and armpits of fur? Anyway, on our journey to Nematode, or Nemo, whatever it is, we found a spot to camp for the first night. It was a dire situation, for I'd not slept in so long and was out of magical power. It's hard work keeping the party together, you understand. At some point while I was asleep, Crackwort tamed a fey creature he dubbed Alfred. Luckily, Alfred has been invaluable, though I am worried about its nature. Later, Maleficent? Milk Toast? Malady? Oh, I must sort these new names out soon. Anyway, later in the night, Malarkey was once again visited upon by some spirit or something. I wasn't really paying attention. I was too groggy, you must understand. But it all seemed to work out somehow. I didn't do anything. Alfredo Oh, is it Alfredo? Well, anyway, Alfredo found us a carriage. Oh my, how excited I was. Once we tracked down a horse to pull it, we managed to make good time on the road. We found a place to camp, and I taught my new pupils about the wonders of grass and how you could wilt it over a fire for more flavor. Mal, we'll call him until I can get his name down. Well, he did not seem to take to my dish. Really, what can you expect of carnivores and omnivores? I suppose they just have different palates. Anyway, we're still on our journey to wherever we're going, so hopefully we can make it there and find that cleric I've been promised an introduction to.
Hello. I am Seth Brax Nightsoul, a Raven Knight Dragonborn from the hidden enclave of Zarseth Kittril. My path has never been a simple one. Since I was a hatchling, I've danced on the edge of reality and dreams, guided by visions from dream space and the whispers of a being known only as the parasite. It offered me power in exchange for a bond, and I, curious as ever, accept it. I see in realms unseen, and in return I must navigate the quirks and curiosities of its influences, like my particular obsession with bread and these tentacles, which I must keep hidden from prying eyes. I wander with a new group of adventurers, driven by something more than mere curiosity. The parasite, my patron, has begun to wane. Its once steady presence faltering, leaving me with fragmented whispers and uneasy silences. I don't know what's causing this change, but I intend to find out. My journey with these companions might be the key to saving it, or perhaps discovering something far stranger than I can ever dream of. As for those companions, there's Cragtoe, a brewer who guards his secret brew as if it were a treasure more precious than gold, saving it for the tavern he dreams of opening one day, though he refuses to share even a drop. He recently befriended a particular creature named Alfred, or as we like to call him, Alfredo. Then there's Lauren, the turtle man, with a love for all things green, who shares his endless supply of grass and leaves with others, like Malchus and poor Bob, may he rest in peace. And then there's Malchus. He's fighting his own dark entity, though I suspect he should be more afraid of the holy Imperium he serves so fervently. A particular group indeed, but perhaps that's exactly what I need. Right after a skirmish with a half-dead bear that disrespectfully devoured and then vomited up my bread offering, we arrived in Demont. We managed to get into the city with little trouble thanks to Malchus. While the others went in search of a healer at the church, I ventured into the local pub looking for any scrap of knowledge that might help my patron, but found nothing. Instead, I met a unique, if somewhat deranged traveler who decided to tag along with me. When we returned, Bob was missing. It took until evening to find him in that same pub, standing on a table, revealing his true nature as a dark entity, having dropped the cloak I gave him. It took a lot of convincing to make the owner believe it was all just a prank. I was surprised to see Malchus so eager to find Bob, but that surprise quickly turned to dread as he dragged Bob before some fearsome jerk from the Imperium. Just as I was about to leap over the table and intervene, the man drained the essence from Bob, and cut down our poor traveler friend in a single merciless blow, before knocking Lauren and me unconscious. The last thing I saw was Malchus struggling with the darkness within him, becoming that infernal thing again. Will we get out of this one? Only time, and perhaps a bit of luck, will tell.
To say a lot has happened these past few days would be an understatement. One moment I was a proud acolyte of the Order of Imperius, the next a runaway criminal, haunted by an ancient evil that now binds itself to me. The life I once knew is gone. My home, once a place of refuge, is now a prison awaiting my incarceration. The Order is corrupted. The Seraphic Commander performs heretical rites on innocents to fuel the war against the Black Hollow forces, an affront to everything Imperius stands for. I fear there is nothing I can do but run, like a coward. I just hope my parents are safe. Damn this cold. After losing consciousness to the entity's possession, I awoke alone in a cell, imprisoned with my companions. Silthrax and Cragtoe were nearby, and I could hear Lauren further down the prison. I had hoped the Seraphic Commander had cured me of the entity, but a passing Order member confirmed it was still bound to me. When the guard walked by Silthrax's cell, I overheard them exchange a few words. Suddenly, a loud, bone-chilling shriek, unlike anything I'd ever heard, pierced my ears, scaring the daylights out of me. Seconds later, the guard, now accompanied by Silthrax, unlocked my cell door and gestured for me to follow. After freeing Cragtoe, we followed Lauren's voice to where he was being held. Words can't describe the shock I felt when I saw Lauren suspended by 4 ropes over a large pit. After we freed him, I noticed several markings carved into his shell. The guard informed us that Lauren's magical essence was being used to power a construct for the war against Black Hollows. And Lauren was far from the first. Trobrook had been sending their magically gifted prisoners here to be used as power sources for this monstrosity. On the wall nearby, we saw it. A large, 4-winged humanoid construct. It resembled an angel, but with sinister features. Guilt overwhelmed me as I looked at Lauren. I had brought him here to Nemont, thinking the Order would help him, as they always had. But instead they used him as a power source for this abomination. Suddenly, the guard was overcome by some affliction and fell into the pit below. We didn't hear any impact until minutes later. We started making our way through the prison, searching for a way out. We came across a room with a large ritual circle in the middle. This was the source of the spell that sapped magic from people to power the construct. I found a book detailing how the ritual works and took it as evidence of the Seraphic Commander's wrongdoings. We continued our search for an escape, and eventually, Alfred, Cragtoe's sleep gulper, found us and led us to a room with a small window. In this room, I found a map detailing the location of some creature in the Arctic wastelands far to the north. Sensing its importance, I took it as well. After escaping through the window, I led everyone to my parents' home to seek brief refuge from any guards that might be looking for us. I was able to inform Mother and Father of everything that was happening. They agreed to help my companions and I flee the city, advising us to seek help from Dooley, the tavern keeper and family friend, to secure a carriage for our escape. Dooley helped us without hesitation, giving us parting gifts, and I said goodbye to my family. We spent the next few days on the road, heading north towards Wolford. We concluded it was the fastest way to leave Order-controlled territory, and the artifacts and knowledge hoarded by the Vikings could prove useful if we can gain access to them. The strange spirit who had been following me since my possession began, also known to the others as Bob, returned. I thought he was gone forever after the Seraphic Commander made him disappear. But he's back, acting as if nothing had happened. Part of me began to believe that Bob might not be an extension of the entity haunting me. Maybe Silthrax was right about him. I requested her assistance in using her dream-walking abilities to help me speak to Bob in the dream world, just as she did on her own. It was strange speaking with Bob, but he provided valuable insight into the entity, how he came to be, and how he can help me learn to harness my new abilities. I became more convinced that he isn't part of the entity. I apologized for treating him poorly and thanked him for his help. I apologized to Silthrax as well, since she and I had been butting heads since we first met. Today, we arrived at the entrance to the Frozen Lands, the territory of the Vikings. A few hours ago, we were confronted by 4 large frost wolves that needed our help in killing one of their own, one who had become afflicted with a disease that drives its victims into a killing frenzy, similar to the giant bear we fought the other day. In return, they promised us safe passage and protection in these lands. We agreed to help and are now waiting for their afflicted comrade to attack. Lauren is acting strange today. He's a bit more reserved, lost in thought, and not speaking his mind the way he usually does. I hope he's all right. Or at least as alright as one can be after being imprisoned and having ritual marks carved into their back. I can't run forever. It feels like only a matter of time before either the Order finds me or the entity takes permanent control. Perhaps I should try to find Imperius himself. Surely he will act once I present the evidence of the Seraphic Commander's heresy. But I don't know how to accomplish this. I don't know where to find him. The Seraphic Commander claims Imperius is sick and weakening. He must be lying, just as he did to Lauren, promising to help him. High Seraphs are immortal. What could possibly... Oh shit. Guys, it's here! Prepare yourselves!
I once considered what cost I might pay to save Cliffside, and especially Cyrus, from their terrible fates. I thought that any cost might be reasonable. I never cared much for the fineries or the lacy paraphernalia in life. Even my very soul seemed a small token to pay. But I always thought that selling your soul simply meant that you belonged to another in some intangible way. Or perhaps you'd be spoken for in some afterlife. Though I never believed in one myself. Maybe selling your soul is what might grant you an afterlife in the first place. A debt so large that you couldn't pay it off in one meager lifetime. And I was fine with that. I'd pay it. But my ethereal kidnapping several days ago by the Fey Queen in her or his or its mysterious forest taught me otherwise. To sell your soul is to give up who you are, to betray your deepest held beliefs, and then, if there is truly an afterlife, well, may the gods save you. But what was I to do after decades? The first real possible solution had finally been presented. If only I could stomach the quest bestowed upon me. Then so, after Alfredo made quick work of that diseased wolf we'd set out to end, I slipped away from my pupils to carry out the Fey Queen's demand, burning down an entire forest. No, of course my heart wasn't in it. I knew there was no way to burn the forest down, not with non-magical fire. All the trees were covered in a large coat of snow, after all. I thought that perhaps if I showed some gesture that I was willing to betray my principles, the Fey Queen would take pity on me and grant my request. Never have I understood before now just how naive I can be. I have always highly prized my gift of intelligence, but I understand now that no amount of intelligence can prepare one for the consequences of actually living life outside of one's own hermitage. dealing with others proves quite tricky. I have regrets now, for sure. I already had them from my involvement in Cyrus's fate, but that had been an accident. Regret from some evil that you have done purposefully is quite another matter altogether. I regret my pompous treatment of my pupils. Who am I to judge them now that I've betrayed myself the way I have? Betrayed the forest by burning one of its own. And of course, that's what I regret the most. The tree that I felled by fire didn't deserve that fate. And even though I paid a blood price to atone, why do I still feel as though I remain in such debt? And certainly I feel horrible for what happened to that village. I thought that surely teaching them how to harvest bark from the forest without killing the trees might save them from starving to death. But who could have known that the gift of wine that we gave them had been contaminated from the zombie wolf? I didn't want to burn them alive, I swear it. But I saw no alternative, no immediate one anyway, and still I clung to the false hope that I'd placed in that Fey Queen. I thought, yes, a real opportunity to do something that wasn't evil, but might satisfy her requirements. I bid Alfredo tell her, him, them, it, post haste. The cold crept up on us as the daylight dwindled. We had to rig up a solution. Well, I say we, but we all know who really did it. We had to rig up a solution out of our tents to cover the fire and us, while still allowing for ventilation so that we, wouldn't die in the night from smoke inhalation. And despite arguing lately more than getting along, my pupil, Martandalus, allowed me to rest nearby so that my cool blood might soak in both the fire and some trapped body heat. It turned out rather lucky for me, because, just as before, only days prior, I was kidnapped in the middle of the night to see the Fey Queen. But this time, little doubting Marty was carried off with... Marty? Whatever. Was carried off with me, bags on our heads. I was relieved that he was brought with me. There's a chill when you are in the presence of the Fey Queen and her minions. But it's not from any physical properties like temperature. I mean, it's quite warm next to the fire. Having my pupil there with me was a great comfort, and he helped me make sense of its requests, and he finally believed that I had not been simply dreaming up her existence. This time, they asked of me to let her take care of the children we rescued from the village, and at first this seemed somewhat reasonable. We can't take care of younglings, we're on the lam. And who else would care for them? But Marshall talked some sense into me and pointed out that she intended to turn the children into flowers or some such torturous existence. What a trickster! What a nasty creature it is! But I couldn't just outright refuse her. I mean, she's very dangerous. So I told her that I would think about it, and to please bring back Alfredo, who she had killed, to journey with us again, and she agreed. After we awoke in our tent, we informed the rest of my pupils of these goings-on before we returned to the road to seek out the land of the Vikings. I expected, based on the description of them by Crackhead, that they would be wearing rags or loincloths or some such nonsense, but as it turned out, they dress rather well. Better than I, for certain. I think these Vikings may be more than they appear to be.
Hello, and welcome back. It is I, Flax. Last time on our adventure, we arrived at Wolfford, the legendary Viking say known, well, for its Vikings. Before we arrived, our wise friend Cragtoad thought it would be a good idea for us, well, most of us, to dress in animal skins, like the locals, to blend in. I decided against it, and luckily when we reached the city, we found that the Vikings had changed quite a bit. Instead of wearing animal pelts, most of them dressed rather, what is that word I learned? Oh right, damper. After explaining to the gate guard that we had just returned from a festival, we were allowed into the city. Once inside, we made our way to a tavern, and it was a massive tavern. To our surprise, they had a Queen Dragonborn. After making a few offerings to the locals and an offering to the Queen, we got to talking with her. Turns out her husband is very ill, and she asks us for our help, even offering to pay for us to arm ourselves with new weapons. Armed with a strange shopping list and a pouch of gold, we embarked on quite the shopping spree. I managed to trade a few things, keeping half of my gold. Nah, more than that. Once our shopping was done, we headed north in search of a pine needle from the top of the oldest tree, well, the oldest that we could find. With Bob's help and a few embarrassing tumbles from myself, we managed to secure it. The next item was an icicle from a frost crab? I don't remember. Or something like that. I'll have to check the list. Unfortunately, that task didn't go quite as smoothly. After failing to find even a single crab or clam, we set up camp for the night. That's when things got chaotic. Malchus woke us up by setting trees on fire. Except for it wasn't Malchus, it was that thing again. As much as I didn't want to, I had to warn his face to get that thing to release him, allowing Marcus to regain consciousness again. It was kind of fun. That left us with the mess of putting out the fires. Lauren tried to use his ice touch, was it? And it worked for a moment. But then the flames turned into this cold blue fire, which didn't burn the trees or anything around it, but we could not put it out like you would any other fire. So, on instinct, I spell siphon most of it, and I think my parasite may have learned how to wield this cold flame. We're still trying to figure out how to put out the rest, but at least it doesn't burn anything. I don't get enough bread for these adventures, I swear.
Our time in the land of the Vikings has not gone according to plan. We intended to blend into their society, hoping to break into their hoard and steal the artifacts and knowledge we seek. Our plan has transformed into undertaking a quest for the Queen of the Vikings herself. A quest to obtain strange items for what I assume is some sort of concoction. These people are not all what we expected. We had prepared for a society of bloodthirsty raiders in rough conditions. Instead, we've encountered a group of well-kept, polite individuals who value peace and, even more unexpectedly, welcome outsiders. We set out further north of Wolford, heading to the coast. The two remaining items on the Queen's list were a freshly extracted black pearl and an ice spike from an ice crab. On our way, we spotted something terrifying. Far across the ocean and the glaciers to the north, I spotted what appeared to be an impossibly large tail. Completely still, towering above the ocean and the surrounding landscape. Its scales were vast and uneven, catching the distant light as they stretched endlessly upward. I had never seen a creature of such magnitude before. I cannot recall any moment in the previous days where either myself or my companions had spotted it. A creature this size would surely be impossible to miss. I cannot fathom how colossal the entire beast must be if all we saw was just the tail. Suddenly, I remembered something. While escaping the prison in Nemant, I stole a map. It had an area marked in the northern glaciers with the drawing of a serpent next to it. At the time, I wasn't entirely sure of its significance. While it's still not entirely clear to me, if I had to guess, the Order likely seeks to sap the creature's magical power, assuming it has any for the war. Perhaps after we complete this quest, we can learn more from the locals about this serpent. When we reached the coast, we began our search for the remaining items. The water was freezing, but it didn't seem to bother Silthrax very much. She took some of the bread I'd bought her and attached it to the hooks on her tentacles. How she wasn't bothered by the icy temperatures is beyond me. Suddenly, a huge ice crab emerged from the water. Silthrax attempted to make friends with it but failed, and combat ensued. My performance in the fight was lackluster, to say the least. I'm still not used to this new magic. My control over it is poor. I only managed to land a few hits on the creature. Thankfully, the others picked up the slack. Kragto's wild magic was a game changer. He produced a bright light that blinded the crab, and Lauren unleashed swarms of magic missiles, killing it. After securing the ice spike, I harvested some crab meat to cook for the party later that night. Lastly, we needed to find the black pearl. I had Bob float above the water to scout out for a clam, but he came up empty-handed. Just as we were about to give up, Lauren spotted one from the shore. I have no idea how he managed to see the clam, but not the massive serpent tail earlier in the day. There was still one problem: the freezing ocean water. None of us could survive a swim down there. We'd freeze before reaching the bottom. I recalled a spell Bob had taught me: Fiend Flesh. I hadn't anticipated using it anytime soon, to be honest. Bob told me it would enhance my demonic features in a way. It didn't sound pleasant, and I wasn't eager to use it, but our quest depended on it, and we all have to do what's necessary to earn the Viking Queen's trust. I cast the spell, and Bob submerged to retrieve the clam. I bundled up as best as I could to minimize the cold's effect, but I never felt such intense cold before. The pain was excruciating. I can't imagine how unbearable it would have been without the spell. Bob successfully retrieved the clam and confirmed that it held the Black Pearl. As we packed our new items and set off back to Wolford, I noticed that my horns felt heavier. When I reached up to touch them, I realized they had grown, a side effect of the spell. I wish I still had my file. The entity still tortures me. It urges me to harm my companions, whispering commands that would lead to my death. My dreams are filled with images of the entity murdering me, my companions, and my loved ones. After my previous incident, Silthrax advised me that I should try speaking with it, to see what it truly wants and to avoid provoking it again. As much as I want to avoid possession, the last thing I want to do is engage with this abomination. It disgusts me. It deserves nothing more to be purged from existence. But if I refuse, it may kill my companions the next time it possesses me, for all I know. The next time I slept, the entity spoke to me. It wants to be free. Free from me, so it can unleash its terror upon the world. The only way this can happen is if I die, whether by my own hand or another's. The Queen was delighted to see our safe return to Wolford. We presented her with the items she had requested, and she quickly crafted a strange concoction from them, handing it back to us. Her Majesty then assigned us another task. If we succeeded, our reward will be access to the Vikings' hoard, but she warned us that this mission would be incredibly difficult. Her husband, the king and warlord of the Vikings, has gone mad. This concoction is supposed to free him from his madness. He's holed up in the underground markets of Wolford and has gathered a strong following that now defies the Queen and her people. If we can cure him, we may prevent a civil war among the Vikings, and in return, we will gain access to the infamous hoard. Imperious willing, we will find something within that hoard to aid us.
Damn it all. This frozen wasteland. I'm hanging on the edge of a cliff by a thread here. I can hardly get my feet in motion with the cool pooling of blood in my body. No one understands. It's hard enough to get going with this giant shell on my back as it is. There's so very little green here, all buried under the snow. I bet this doesn't melt all year round. I'm sick of the bark. I talked such a good game about it, but if I'm honest, the bark of the kind of trees that can even survive out here is not exactly the tastiest or even the most nutritious. It's living, but it's certainly not living. None of us can afford a great life. It's just not in the cards. Malfeasance keeps getting possessed by some fearful entity, and I imagine we'll have to figure something out to save him eventually. And Silly has those tentacles from whatever she's pacted with. And Crackhead seems less and less there by the day. I'm not sure how sane that one is to begin with. And then there's me, freezing out here, searching for something that ever remains just out of reach. I can see salvation ahead of me, but ever does fate draw it back like a fisherman teasing with his bait, reeling it just out of reach. And what I fear most is that eventually I will swim toward it with all my might and finally catch that bait, whatever the consequences. We returned the items that the queen bid us fetch, and she had a potion made from them. But of course, there was one more request before we would be allowed to view the Viking stash of gold and artifacts. We were to cure the king of his madness. I'll admit, I should have questioned what sort of madness this was. I am a learned man, after all, but I've been so preoccupied with my own personal quest and failings that it just didn't occur to me. And what's more is that I lived so long in solitude that even though I've read many a book on political intrigue and theory, politics itself eludes me, and here we were assigned to essentially quell the beginnings of a civil war within this society we hardly understood ourselves. We were certainly relying on this queen to have noble intentions because we were doing whatever it took to get what we wanted. The exact thing I am afraid of doing, ever since I very nearly fell for the Fey Queen's beguiling charisma. We were told that we must infiltrate the black market, as the king was underground and that was the only passage. I couldn't imagine what a Viking black market should look like. They were already known as pillagers, so what could they have to hide in some underground market? A lot of found items, as it turns out. I suppose they were considered some of the riskier stolen goods. And of course, to fit in, I was expected to show interest in all these trinkets, despite having so little coin as to be a joke to some black market swindler. I looked around and I did see an opportunity to perhaps gain a little comfort back in our caravan, but again, I hadn't the coin, not really. And besides, all of these goods were stolen. I don't think that I could ethically buy anything there. But then Silly approached, holding a book she'd bought from one of the stalls. Clearly a copy swiped from Cliffside. At first, I was quite angered that someone had entered the Athenaeum while I was away and stolen some of its contents. But then I realized what that meant. There is a time limit on my ability to save the residents of Cliffside, including Cyrus. If this little turd had the courage to trespass into the infamous Dreadcliff, and was then rewarded with loot, it was only a matter of time before others would do the same, and who knows what may happen. Luckily, the entrance into Cliffside Treasury would still be impossible, but they could end up doing something that kills my friends. I knew then that I must solve this issue as quickly as possible. And then one of the stalls held a helpless little turtle, which, of course, these little rats would do something like that. I could smell the stench of carcasses as soon as we'd entered. But this was no ordinary turtle, as I discovered after Silly stealthily freed him as a drunken crackhead distracted the stall keeper. This was a dragon turtle, known for growing into large, ship-sinking aquatic beasts. Best that we rescued him rather than having him fall into the wrong hands. And besides, little Olivier is so freaking adorable. I really wanted to outright adopt him as my own, as humans do dogs, but it's probably best that we return him to his mother in the wild. Mal-tempered scouted out a passageway using Bob, thinking that it would perhaps lead us to the king. Bob was gone for quite some time, and apparently at a distance that Malady could no longer sense him. Eventually, he came back into focus for him and was covered in rats. We decided to go find him and the king, which eventually led us to a hoard of gold and scrolls and potions, guarded by a giant rat man who identified himself as the king of wolf farts, or whatever. The king we were looking for, at any rate. Silly tried to trick him, and when that didn't go so well, Marshall intervened and offered this Rat King a potion of Titan's vitality. Clever name. Of course, it was really the potion the Queen had made to end the King's madness. The potion reverted his form. It worked. I supposed it was less a madness that had come over the king, and more of a revolting rat transformation. But, of course, as always, whatever malady was rooted in malarkey decided to take an opportunity to attempt to possess him and kill the cured king. Silly tried her best to stop the possession, but even her best fell just short of sufficient. It was up to me, as their teacher, to put an end to this, but if I'm honest, I didn't really know what to do. So I tackled him. The entity tried to stab me in reply, but my glorious shell kept me from harm, of course. And that seemed to do the trick. I decided to remember that for next time. We returned to meet with the Queen, who was most grateful to us and expressed her trust in our intentions. She granted us the key to their hoard so that we might find artifacts to help us. Inside, I found a scroll of particular interest that indicated I might summon some kind of being or beings. Marshmallow had found some kind of map that proved of interest to his own personal journey. I wasn't privy to the specifics, and Silly found another being inside of a jar that attached itself to her and granted her new tentacles, which seemed, I don't know, promising or ominous, however you might feel about that. So I thought, why not try this summoning? Maybe it would help me like the others seem to have been helped by these artifacts. Silly had to read the spell for me as I did not know the language, but we summoned some great and terrible looking beast that said it wished only to be free. And if I made a wish on him, whatever my heart desired, it would grant it, and then be freed from the scroll which bound it. Now, I must remind you, I have greatly desired to rescue my comrades for decades now, and I was currently freezing my tail off in the tundra. I'd already been baited by the Fey Queen and all these promises others had made to me only to be ripped out from under me like Malarkey's order when they tried to drain my magic. And the news that Cliffside had already been violated and robbed played over and over in my mind and demonstrated how little time I had to resolve this issue. So, sure, right? Well, why not? I was prepared to make that wish. This creature only wanted to live, much like anyone would. Only wanted to escape imprisonment, right? I was ready. I was willing. And we'd trusted the Wolf Farts Queen on less to get what we wanted, didn't we? Oh, but Markowitz expressed concern that it might be evil. So we investigated, and it turned out that it wished to burn cities to the ground. Of course, yet again, baited, only for my wish to require some terrible evil to befall the world, reeled in again, ever out of reach, enticing me even more. Probably the same way Olivier had been captured, and I swear on any gods that may or may not exist that I can only hold out so long. I'm trying so hard not to pay evil with more evil, but I know deep down just how vulnerable I really am. I closed the scroll. It disappeared. The monster, I mean. But I didn't put the scroll back. No, I kept it. Just as I'd told the Fey Queen I'd have to consider her offer further. What am I supposed to do? What is anyone supposed to do when the only methods of saving their loved ones come with evil as its price?
Well, the first thing that I have to say is that I'm not a particularly happy person at the moment. You know, I might have been drinking a bit, and all of a sudden I realized that we're in a place and there's blue fire and there's these dead ones coming at us and they're in this big pack. And some of my friends go right, so I decide to go left and split them, and I was hoping to circle the dead ones with some fire and hopefully burn some of them, but more importantly keep them trapped until me and my friends were able to kill the other pack that had split off. But things did not go the way I planned. Our DM decided to make the zombies kind of come out of nowhere on me, so I found myself trapped. And after I found myself trapped, I realized that there would be no escape, that I was going to be run down. I was going to be killed. So I might as well take a few out with me, huh? Next thing I know is I'm being dragged across the ground by Mr. Turtle Man. Thank the gods for him. It hurts to breathe. It hurts to move. And good God, it even sometimes hurts to look in the mirror. What the fuck happened to my nose?
Hurry up and wait. That's pretty much been our routine lately. We've been stuck waiting for Cragtoe and Lauren to heal up. I give Lauren some leaves and Cragtoe some bottle of non-alcoholic beer, trying to lighten the mood. I love a bit of chaos, but in their condition, I didn't think getting drunk would do any good. Still, chaos found a way. Cragtoe pulled a fast one on me, convincing me to put Lauren's hand in a bowl of warm water, claiming it was some kind of therapeutic gnome magic. Spoiler, it wasn't. Lauren ended up wetting the bed, while magic my foot. Later, we discovered there were no baths available, so Lauren decided to roll around in the snow, naked, to clean up. And then he strolled back inside the same way. After I fetched him a robe from the nurses, I took a moment to consult with patrons about our next step. My new patron seems a lot more aggressive and reckless than my main one. Thankfully, my main patron, Parasite, helped me steer towards doing some research while we waited. I stumbled upon some useful information about sightings of the creature that found its way into me. My second patron, I guess you can call it. Whatever that means. We had Cragtoe's gems appraised, and he went off to rent a boat. We decided to check out some ruins that I'm eager to explore before heading back to Lauren's home. Well, that's the plan, once we get the boat. And maybe other possible locations. I really want to figure out what I'm sharing my body with. It's all a bit unsettling. After a while, we met up at the pub looking for Cragtoe. We chatted a bit before he headed out with the kids. What did he call them? Gerbil 1 and Gerbil 2. Surprisingly, Malchus convinced us to have a few drinks. I think they watered that stuff down because it took forever to catch a bus. But when we finally did, it was hilarious to see a tipsy Lauren. That buzz didn't last long. When we got back to the house, we found a letter from Cragtoe. He decided to leave the adventure behind and give the kids a good life. It'll be quieter without him, but I wish him the best of luck, and I hope they all have a good life ahead of them. Maybe, I'll mail them some bread if we survive these runs.
My friends, I don't look in the mirror and see a defeated man. I see someone who's been given a second chance. When I saw you all fighting for your lives, I realized that I've been selfish for too long, obsessed with starting my trade and making it successful just like my father did. But I've hurt a lot of people. I've made a lot of mistakes. I didn't expect to live when I lit that fire, but since I did, it's time I go and set things right. I asked the children if they wanted to stay here, go with you, or go with me. They decided to go with me. I'll see that they're taken care of, and I will try to raise them like my father raised me. I hope to see you again. Until then, Cragtoe Wardhare, Gerbil, and Gopher. P.S. The money beside this letter will pay for the ship I told you about. And good luck, friends. My name is Enaliel. I don't have a whole lot to say about myself, but I was hired to escort these people to the northern area. It's a very desolate place, ice and cold. It was kind of strange because once we got on land, it wasn't long before some weird lady on a broom flew up, and the people I was with seemed to know her, but they were scared of her, and it seemed like someone was lying. Maybe they're teamed up with this person. I'm not entirely sure, honestly, but
Lauren, you went back on your deal. You have 10 days to get to Cliffside if you want to save your mentor.
after she left, a bad storm started to happen, and I didn't know whether we should go back or not, but I just had a feeling that we were getting close to where they were trying to go. I sensed this magical presence, and so we pushed forward, and we came to this place.
Your plan's in here, Storm Giant!
And it had giant jars. And the people I was with seemed to kind of know what they were looking for. She knew that there was some jars, but there was this one corpse that had been skinned. I've seen worse, but it was not a great sight. And so I think the people I was with were a little afraid. We heard this howling. So I brought my team back in, and we eventually decided to kind of make camp. These giant creatures showed up. And I'm not sure if those are the ones that skinned that person. But we were able to scare them off, at least. I'm really looking forward to getting away from the ice, honestly, and heading back down south. As much as I love my job, I don't like the cold very much. I'm used to warm places. I was not made for the cold.
I think I was born in the north in the cold. But for most of my life, I've been spending time in very, very hot places. So we'll see what happens, and hopefully we will make it back alive. And I will continue on my journey of enjoying life for once.
I stare into the vault. Either side of the door is guarded by a stone dragon, each wing touching its counterparts at the tip of the arch. Gold light swells in the center, but it is all of it obscured in a dreamy fog. Are you sure we can trust the guy? A hulking black half-dragon drops a heavy stack of tomes into the vault with a thud that reverberates against the cavern walls and spews dust, scattering the golden rays like sunlight through wisps of cloud. In truth, I don't know. It's a huge risk we're taking that he won't look for others of our order here to work his magics on. But you didn't see the heaping piles of gold in his carts. We could fund Cliffside for generations now, and our cabinets have been running so bare as of late. Besides, part of the deal was in our active research. Well, you know me. I wasn't really listening anyway, so I'll take your word for it. Were you staring at my ass again? Ormana smirks and presses Cyrus against the cliff wall. What? This fat ass right here? He cups the fattest handful of Cyrus he can get. He towers over him, so he bends at the waist to let Cyrus hook an arm around his neck. Ormana, his hand still in such a precarious location, lifts Cyrus above his waist. Cyrus wraps his legs around Ormana's back, and, as their faces meet, Ormana's wings envelop them and block out most of my view of their kiss. Thank the gods. Those two are disgusting. And what do you even do when you kiss? Chew on each other's teeth? Ormana had really sharp ones, and Cyrus, being half-orc, had those protruding bottom teeth that his lips could never cover. And how did they determine a winner anyway? I always imagine it's like having a thumb war, but with your faces. Nasty. I have a little tickle in my nose. Ever since the night before, my throat's been feeling scratchy and I've been sneezing. It kind of hurts at this point. And if I sneeze now, it'll give away that I'm here and not at my lessons. I hold it in. Holding. But it's useless. Achoo! A thick mist envelops the entire face of the cliff and obscures the dirt path leading back up into the village. The temperature drops rapidly, and icicles form on the bottom surfaces of the gate behind the two who are grappling jaws or whatever. A green eye appears from behind its fleshy coat and pinpoints me. Ormana lets Cyrus slide slowly from his arms before he crosses them in anger. Your little twerp is staring at us. Quit calling him that. Cyrus pushes away from the hulk and shuffles toward me. Come on, Bug. I see your eyes peeping over that boulder. What are you doing down here? Aren't you supposed to be studying for your exam on familiar conjuring? Those old tomes won't read themselves, you know. I fumble, climbing over the rock. My body is tiny and weak, and I realize I'm just a kid. I trip my way into Cyrus's embrace, and he lifts me onto his shoulder. He looks up at me, beaming, seemingly proud of me even though I'm so misbehaved. I'm safe here. A familiar warmth settles in my chest. I'm sorry, Cyrus. I sneaked out of my lessons to come tell you that I think I'm getting sick. Ormana chuckles. Little pipsqueak. He's always sick, huh? I don't know what is coming over me, but the urge is overwhelming and I stick my tongue out at Ormana. He's always teasing me. Cyrus must enjoy face wrestling with him a lot because I don't understand why they're always hanging out. Cyrus is too nice to be friends with a guy like him. You're lucky I don't pluck that tongue right out of your skull, kid. He sticks his long, forked tongue out at me. Come on, you're an adult, big guy, Cyrus says. I'm sorry, I think Lauren needs me to watch over him again tonight. Rain check? Ormana pouts. Yeah. I'm in Cyrus's bed. I guess that he'd tucked the sheets in around me and fallen asleep at my feet. My throat is so itchy. I'm so thirsty. I look at the nightstand and find a glass of water Cyrus has set out for me, and I down it in a few gulps. A noise, perhaps carefully shuffling feet, washes in like the tide through the crack between the door and the floor. I break free of the covers and slip down the side of the bed until my feet finally meet the cold tile. I can barely stand. My legs are so weak. I check the grandfather clock across the room. 2 a.m. I tiptoe, as best as a turtle can, toward the door. But my heart catches in my throat when I see Ormana stretched out over the floor at the foot of the bed, his hands clasped together with Cyrus's as they slept. A little vomit escapes into my mouth. I slide the door open, bit by painstaking bit, careful not to make a noise while holding back another tickle in my nose. Just what I need, another sneeze to wake Ormana up. If I don't like him at his best, I certainly don't like him in the early morning when he's still groggy and cranky before his coffee. I finally pry the door open. My eyes adjust slowly to the dim light in the hallway, moonlight from the windows in the foyer. There, in the doorway, I see a shape, a dark silhouette, the shape of a man. He presses a finger to his lips to signal me to hush, to cooperate. I gulp air through my nostrils and my eyes water, but I can't sneeze because I start screaming at the top of my lungs instead and dive onto the bed behind Cyrus. Black Hollows! Shouts from the other reaches of the Athenaeum ring out from behind the doorway. Ormana and Cyrus leap into action. Ormana lifts the man in the doorway above his head and throws him through Cyrus's bedroom window. The shattered glass rains down 3 stories onto the street below in a symphony of softly tapped cymbals. He turns back to battle, a much larger man that made his way into the room. Another sneaks her way inside, but Cyrus is quickly on her, clubbing her with his wizard staff. Run, Lauren! I jump back out of bed and run into the hall. I look in either direction at the chaos. Several wizards lie in pools of their own blood. Shadows are leaping room to room. I have to get out through the entrance, make it to the village streets. I run down the hallway, scratching my nose as I dodge and weave and tuck my head and arms into my shell as needed to get through the shadows as best I can, but one of the men lifts me from the floor by my robes. I dangle there for a second in midair before Cyrus tackles the intruder and chokes him with his staff as the man's feet writhe and thrash until they don't move anymore, until even the last wheezes of air no longer escape his lips as his breath is choked out of him. We're on the dormitory side balcony overlooking the foyer and its grand stairway. I'm almost out. I run down the side stairs on my little feet until they meet in the middle with the stairs from the opposite side. But my weakened legs finally give out from under me as I run down the last 20 or 30 steps. I tuck myself into my shell as I spin out, thump, 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 hitting the corners of every step along the way until I'm left spinning on the bottom floor. I'm dazed, but I manage to stand and push through the room, spinning around me. I'm holding in that sneeze again. No time for that. There's a man descending from the middle of the stairway where I was before I'd fallen the rest of the way. He's gripping a sword in one hand. I hear Cyrus's voice calling out, maybe casting some kind of spell, but I'm still in a stupor and... Damn it, my nose is stinging from the desperate need to expel whatever is tickling my nasal passages. The man leaps from the 10th stair. I'm going to die. 5 minutes, that's all I managed. 5 minutes since I'd checked the clock upstairs. The one on the mantel above the fireplace, next to the staircase, confirms it. All of my magical training, but every spell in the book eludes me, and I've only managed to survive for 5 minutes. Pathetic. My eyes water from the stinging pain of holding back that damn sneeze for those 5 minutes. This was going to be my last thought. A sneeze I didn't even have time for. The moonlight pouring in from behind the glass pane in the lunette above the front door glances off the sword in the man's hand just 3 feet before me. I start wincing, bracing for impact, but Cyrus was soaring from my peripheral, swiftly flying toward me, magic wings sprouting from his back. He intercepts. The sword pierces right through his chest, his heart on a skewer. Blood gushes from the back as the sword protrudes from it. His magic wings shatter. The shining remnants of it float away and dissipate. And I finally fucking sneeze! The sound shakes the entire building by its foundation. A ghastly hand, larger than my entire body, reaches out from my chest and envelops Cyrus, wraps itself around his heart, weapon and all. The air swells around me, space falters. The clock stops ticking, the hands frozen. The man's hand is gripped around his sword, the top of the hilt pressed firmly against Cyrus's chest, like a key in a keyhole. But nothing was moving, and the 2 men remained suspended in midair, unanimated. The men of shadows, too, all across the library, are frozen in place, gripped by my ghastly hands, stuck in a ripple in the fabric of matter and gravity and light. So too are the other librarians and wizards. Ormana dangled in the air next to Cyrus like a fly suspended in a fruit pudding. His wings remain mid-flap. His arm remains outstretched toward Cyrus, unmoving, desperately grasping for his lover, never to connect. And, just like that, reality ripples like disturbed pond water and shreds away from me until I come to in a field of snow blanketed in the dead of night and firelight. Something lashes out, digs its teeth into my ankle. Zombie. I become alert. Something else. Not quite alive, not quite dead. Using my eyes is like looking through aged glass. The world shimmers and bends in several directions. I hear Cyrus whisper into my ear, "What did you do to me, Bug?" I ask what he means, but his skin is melting off the bone. One eye drops to the dirt and rolls into my infected foot. I hunger, but not for leaves, not for bark. The Fey Queen appears. Her minions dance around me as the seraphic commander draws blood from my body. I shiver from his icy touch. The Fey Queen asks, "Well, don't you have anything for me? I can put your loved ones back together." I say, "But they've melted now like warm butter." "No matter," she replies. "I can reshape them from the mud, from your blood. Just give me what I seek." I remember it's in my pocket. I pull it out. The parchment unravels infinitely. The bottom rolls out of sight. A dark cloud rises from somewhere, and a giant arm reaches out for me. A monstrous hand grips me by the leg and dangles me over a campfire made of the largest tree in the forest. "You set me free. Thank you," it says as it burns cliffside to the ground. "You failed us. You failed us. You failed us," cry the orphans.
"We're dead now, because you released it,"
Malchus whispers in my ear. The great serpent slithers and coils around me. In a voice like Silthrax, it speaks. "Join us, Lauren. Join us." "Join us," says the Fey Queen. Say the orphans. Says Malchus. Says Silthrax. Says Cragtoe, who no longer has a face. Says the serpent. Says the beast from the scroll. Says the Queen of Wolfheart. Says the seraphic commander. Says Bob. Says Alfredo. The serpent lifts me over the giant pit where I was tied up and drops me.
"Join us!"
As I fall and fall and fall, and I hit the ground. Splat! It was a terrible nightmare to wake from. My ankle was still sore. My clothes and blankets were soaked in my own piss again. I couldn't believe that crackhead and the children had pulled that prank on me again. Oh, wait. Everything came crashing back to me harder than hitting the floor. Cragtoe was gone. The orphans were gone. Malchus wouldn't talk to any of us, and our ship had finally brought us to loading port. Cliffside jutted out sharply from the steep, rocky edges of the coast. A harrowing sight. I don't know what awaits us. I don't know how this deal is going to work. I'm afraid of all that hangs in the balance, but now, finally, it would all come to a head, and I would have to deal with it. I still have companions at my side, though they may be more broken than I.